This conference will now be recorded.
Awesome. So we can call the meeting to order. Welcome to the April meeting, guys. And thank you for the flowery napkins. All right, the first item on the agenda for us is to approve the regular monthly meeting minutes. Anybody?
I move to approve the minutes of the Board of Managers regular monthly meeting held on March 10th, 2025 as drafted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the minutes are approved. The next is a consent agenda. Well, unless anyone has any objections, we just move right through this. Have you
And
read
so
about
this? I can just speak
Okay.
briefly to the fact that this is a request for the removal of a magnolia tree measuring 11 inches in diameter at 5407 Center Street. This is a property that has already received a permit for demolition. The applicants are seeking to rebuild with a new house. The tree is within the footprint of the overdig for the house. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. You'll see a photo that'll come up here in a minute of the magnolia tree itself. The tree ordinance board has contacted all of the neighbors and there was no objection, including from the resident at 5409 Center Street, where the tree sits partially on the shared property line. They have written in support, and the tree ordinance board's proposed consent agreement would be for a 2-for-1 reforestation requirement with 2 hardwood deciduous canopy trees. So that would certainly be a net plus for this property to have 2 hardwood deciduous trees in place of the 1 felled magnolia. So yes, as Ms. Leonard was stating, unless there is any objection, this will be deemed approved and no formal action is required by the board.
I'm hearing no objection. So we'll move on to the special permit.
So the next case is a request to install 1 electric vehicle charging station within the Primrose Street public right-of-way in front of 1 Primrose Street. The unit would be located 8 feet inside of the public sidewalk. This is actually the first special permit case that is being presented to the board since your adoption of the ordinance that permits electric vehicle charging stations in areas that would historically have been prohibited for structures either in setbacks or in the public right-of-way, et cetera. You carved out a specific provision within the public rights-of-way ordinance that allows for these electric charging stations, provided they come before you for approval of a special permit. In all other aspects, this proposed electric vehicle charging station does comply with the code's requirements for the size of the unit. It is also 8 feet from the public sidewalk and is adequately screened through existing landscaping as well as additional boxwood that have been proposed by the applicant. For your reference, we have thus far, since that ordinance had also allowed these units on private property, we have issued a total of 6 permits for electric vehicle charging stations on private property. And so this is a continuing improvement that we are seeing here in the village, but this would be the first to be approved within the public right-of-way, but certainly in line with the approved ordinance.
Right, and if you go back to the previous picture, you'll see that it's behind those bushes. It's in their driveway. No one would even see it. So
That's correct.
okay, does anyone have any questions or comments about this or of motion?
It seems to me that if we're going to ever approve any of these, we should approve this one. So I move to approve the special permit request in case A 8622 on the basis that the evidence presented, including the staff report and case synopsis, demonstrates that the applicable requirements for the approval of the special permit have been met. Staff is directed to draft a decision based on this evidence, including findings of fact and conclusions approving the special permit.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Okay, great. So we can move on to the next thing, which is the treasurer's report.
I have two small things to add to the written treasurer's report. In our last meeting, I mentioned the possibility that we might want to move our treasury funds from UBS to Wells Fargo because the woman we've been primarily working with and who really understands municipalities and our needs was making that move. That's no longer an option. Wells Fargo, at least our local Wells Fargos, have decided they do not want to mess with municipalities. So we'll leave it where it is, and it's become pretty much routine. I don't really need much advice from the people at UBS anymore. It's just pretty much every time we tend to keep these at 18 months to 2 years sorts of maturities. So we're not betting on interest rates one way or the other particularly. And so every time one matures, we pretty much replace it with a similar. The second thing is that my nemesis, the certificate of deposit, CD, is almost vanquished. Our second to the last one, I believe, is up in early May. It's establishing a new record for how far I got to drive to deal with it. It's up by Baltimore.
Very old
But
school.
I think after this, there'll only be one left. That's it.
Thank you for your report.
And for your modesty.
Yeah, thank you for wheeling the check and closing.
So, next we have time for a public hearing on our budget, and we're open for public comment. Is anybody here to talk about the budget? Didn't think so. So, I think we can move on to the matters for board discussion. And I think you're going to head that up.
Yes, no, that sounds good. And I won't give too long of an introduction before turning it over to Michelle Rosenfeld, our outside counsel on the issue of land use matters. But kind of the top line is that we're in pretty good shape across the three different issues. House Bill 503 in Annapolis, also the governor's housing and jobs bill. After a lot of amendments, it actually failed to pass the House or crossover in the Senate, and for this legislative session did not advance. And so we continue to monitor the situation there because plenty of bills that don't advance on the first go round reappear in subsequent sessions. There's comfort in the fact that as the bill was amended and it was largely rewritten in the amendment, it was much more of a reporting and tracking of housing and jobs than the original bill, which was much more disruptive to county and municipal planning processes. So no news there, and wait for next year. On the technical amendment, also in Annapolis, that just clarifies the role of municipalities in permitting and regulating construction. Good news there is that that bill passed both the House and Senate. I've not had a confirmation that the governor has signed it.
Correct. I have not seen that it has been signed.
We're staying tuned there. And that, of course, is a bill that we've championed, been very supportive of, have relied on our state delegation to help us with, and very good news on that front. I'm stealing Michelle's thunder on that. And lastly, is the More Housing Now at the county level. This is the question of the degree of development allowed on corridors. That is advancing through the county council. There are unlikely to be additional hearings, but there are probably going to be work sessions before the county council. Probably the summary there is that its current status is imperfect. It's not everything the village would like to see or that our testimony advocated. There's still the possibility that along corridors, there will be the opportunity to chain lots together, either multiple lots that face the corridor, or possibly a lot facing the corridor being combined with the lot interior behind that lot in the interior of the neighborhood. That's not everything we'd like to see. We'd like to see a little bit more restriction on that. And secondly, historic preservation carve-outs are not everything we'd like to see. It's possible that even contributing or outstanding resources could be redeveloped in favor of the More Housing Now proposal. But we'll see. And ultimately, there's 10 properties in the village that are subject to More Housing Now. So it's a very relatively, as far as the whole village is concerned, it's a relatively small impact. But of course, for the sake of those residents, we're eager to continue to monitor and represent them as this process goes forward. With that, Michelle, I've stolen some of your thunder, and probably left you some complexity. If the board in particular has questions, Michelle, what would you like to run with there?
Sure. Just on the jobs housing bill, it was easy to miss on. It actually did cross over to the Senate, but it got out of the Rules Committee on Thursday, went to one of the Senate committees on Friday, who then held a special session on Saturday, and shockingly didn't get out of that committee back to the House through the necessary number of subsequent readings. So it did die. I do think we can expect that there will be other attempts next year to get something a little closer to what they were trying to achieve this year. But for purposes of this year, it was just a tremendous win from our perspective. There also is a state bill that passed that I just want to bring to your attention. It was we had noted it very early. It relates to accessory dwelling units, and it had very, very expansive controls limiting municipal authority on how you could regulate, or more importantly, not regulate accessory dwelling units. It did pass significantly scaled back form, and I am coordinating with Sue Ellen Ferguson and Ron, just to make sure that we all agree on how that applies to how it's a bit unclear. But I just wanted to put that on your radar screen, and I'll be following up with you with respect to that. In terms of the zoning text amendment, I think you hit on the most significant points, all of which at the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee work session, those three issues turned out to be not as they had been represented in the lead up to the committee work session. One of them, of course, being that we'd been told that historically designated properties would not be eligible. It turns out they can be. And we were told that chaining both side by side and to the rear was not allowed. It couldn't happen under current subdivision regulations, which both the planning director, for the planning board, and I had disagreed with that analysis. And at the end of the day, so did the county council's zoning attorney. So those are the three most significant changes. We did submit testimony. We did submit very specific proposed amendments to the legislation, and I expect that those proposed amendments will get taken up in future work sessions before the committee. So overall, I think in terms of the closeout of the General Assembly session, I think we fared very well. And then we're still in the thick of it with respect to ZTA 2502. And I'm happy to answer questions if there are other topics or issues that you might be concerned about.
I would just add two additional things. The bill that Michelle referenced regarding ADUs, if anyone wants to look them up, they're House Bill 1466, and the cross-filed bill is Senate Bill 891. And as Michelle noted, she is in conversations with our general counsel, as well as with Ron Bolt. That was the name that you didn't hear there. He represents several other Chevy Chase area municipalities, and was kind of our lead on the technical amendment that was successful. I did confirm it has not yet been signed by the governor, but certainly is en route to his desk. I also just wanted to note that in several conversations, Andrew Friedson, our District 1 representative, has acknowledged receipt of the joint testimony that the village submitted along with our neighboring municipalities. And he has noted that the council's legal staff has been directed to review that letter and see how aspects of it can be addressed. And much of, as was noted by Mr. Morseberger, much of what was addressed in that letter had to do with things like the historic district, the combining of properties, and other detailed elements of the ZTA. So we are hopeful that we can continue to have conversations with Andrew Friedson as well as other members of the council to really address what he even termed in a meeting today as being very reasonable and thoughtful requests related to the ZTA.
Thank you.
Sue Ellen has anything that you wanted to add?
Well, thank you to all of you, Lou, Michelle, Shana, Sue Ellen, for being on top of this. We had good results.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
thanks for summarizing it all, and to be continued. Okay. Shall we move on to the next thing, which is the roadway-based rehabilitation? We're going to learn more about roadway-based rehabilitation than
We're going to give you more of an education here on how roadways are built than you could have ever imagined.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as it relates to Primrose Street, how they should have been built and have not been built over the years. So, as you know, the board approved earlier this year for us to begin the Primrose Street stormwater remediation and roadway rehabilitation project. And essentially, this was all started due to the need to install a trench drain along the westernmost portion of the north side of Primrose Street to address a long-standing condition of groundwater that was coming up and flowing down the curb in a constant manner all year long, even in drought conditions. As we looked at the roadway and saw its condition, as well as the gutter pan along the entire length of the street, we recommended to the board and you approved replacing all of the curbs along Primrose Street and replacing the roadway. That project began on March 31st. Unfortunately, on April 1st, our contractor called us out after identifying that the base underneath the 2-inch of asphalt that was milled was not in a good condition. And it was in such a substandard condition that it required us coming out and determining how to move forward before moving on to the next phase of the project. The village's project engineer, Robin Barnhart, who is with CPJ and Associates, our consulting engineering firm, worked with our contractor to do a more detailed assessment of the roadway on April 2nd to really nail down just how much of the roadway was in this poor condition. Based upon those findings, they have come back to us and made a recommendation for 2 options, which Robin will detail. She's joining us virtually this evening. So we have some slides that we're going to go through, and Robin will walk you through what the issues are and what the 2 options are that we're presenting to you today. One of the things I want to just note for the board is that you're going to be asked to make 2 decisions this evening related to this matter. Which option to proceed forward with, and therefore to direct authorization to me to issue a change order for an amendment to the contract, depending upon the option you choose. The second thing that you will be asked to do is to amend the line item in the budget for this project to allocate the funds that are needed specific to whichever option you choose. There was not, as you know, an actual budget ordinance in your packets because there's some blanks that need to be filled in as far as what option and the amounts that need to be put in. So we'll need to do that somewhat on the fly as we come to the end of this conversation. But I will go ahead and
Is all this FY 2026?
this is all FY 2025 monies. Yes, our goal would be to resume this project, hopefully either later this month or early May, in hopes of getting it completed under either option before the end of the current fiscal year. One of the things I just wanted to point out, I already did this show and tell from Ms. Leonard and Mr. Morseberger. These two stones that I have here are what was found in the base, just 2 inches below the asphalt. And in case you're wondering, no, this is not normal. You should not find large stones like this only 2 inches under the surface of the roadway. This was indicative of the fact that we did not have a stable structural base under that roadway, which helps to explain why it was in the deteriorating state that it was in.
So that base is usually just concrete, right?
Correct. It's usually, and Robin has very good slides that she'll show in a minute that really do show that very clearly of what the various layers should be under the asphalt. And so there is a rock base, not at 2 inches below the surface, and usually it's not large chunks like this. It's a much smaller type of gravel. But she'll go into more explanation about that in her presentation. Okay.
So who was the contractor?
I'm sorry, Ms. Morgan, can you
Sorry,
come over
forgot.
here?
Who was the contractor who was hired to do this?
So in the past or the current contractor?
Well, not the current one, the one
Yeah.
who didn't do the good job, it
Yeah.
sounds like.
So as many of the village's streets have been, they have been repaved and redone over many, many decades.
This
And
utility
so,
work.
yes, there's also utility work that takes place. And so the utility companies, subcontractors come in after they've done work and they can replace sections. So it really is kind of an amalgamation, if you will, of various different parties that have been in there. And some of the condition that we've seen of that subbase is very indicative of the fact that there have been various different parties dealing with the roadway over the years in various different states. Well, we do not have a technical roadway crew to catch these kinds of things. And that's why this has been a unique project, because we do have an actual project engineer who is the point person and is the one, Robin Barnhart, who is the one who identified that, no, this needs to be adequately dealt with and summarily brought it to our attention. So we're in good stead under this project, but it is indicative of not careful oversight of prior roadway projects along this block. So let me turn it over to Robin, because I think she will fill in a lot of the blanks. Robin, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Shana.
Oh, I think we
As Shana mentioned, we're gonna give you an update of where we're at. So next slide, please. So first I wanted to start with where we started before the work and what you see out there right now. When we went out and started this project on behalf of the village, we were originally tasked with looking at the drainage issue that Shana referenced between houses 1 and 15 on Primrose. As part of that, we had looked at the roadway in front of those houses and had noted the deterioration of the roadway, and we had actually mapped or located those issues of distress in front of those. And then as the project went on and was going out to bid, that's when we talked to Shana about, well, you're almost halfway of this block of street, and as part of the other issues that we knew that were down on the other end of the street, should this project also repair the roadway the whole way since you're already out there? And so we didn't have those areas detailed as far as dimensions for pavement distress, so we did make some assumptions for the bid quantities in there. But what I wanted to show is here is what we saw out there is the bulk of the distress that you saw in the roadway before we did the milling was along the center of the roadway, which is understandable, as that's where most of the vehicular traffic runs, since there are cars parked on both sides of the street. We saw the utility trench, or evidence of that, which you can see in the top photo. You can see the lines running the length of the roadway, and it's about a 2-foot wide strip there, and that was indicative of a utility trench, and so we recognize that. There was also distress that we refer to as alligator cracking. You can see a little bit in the top photo and more of a larger patch in the bottom photo. And this is a symptom of having an unstable base. And so we knew that there were areas where the base of the road was having some instability, and that we would have to do a full depth repair at those. So as I mentioned, we between 1 and 15 Primrose, we had taken some rough measurements of those areas and identified the approximate limits that we would need to do based off what we saw on the surface. Also shown on this photo or this slide in the left-hand corner is I wanted to talk about the different layers of a traditional asphalt roadway. It's essentially 3 layers on top of the existing soil. So the bottommost layer is your subgrade. That's the existing soil out there. We then put a stone subbase down, typically 6 inches thick. Then we come in with an asphalt base course and then an asphalt surface course. The surface course is what your tires run on. And as the pavement ages and starts to deteriorate, one of the maintenance activities that can be done is to mill that surface course off and then do an overlay on top of it to extend the life of the road before you have to rebuild the whole road. So this is a traditional asphalt road pavement section. There was a question before we got started into the presentation about having a concrete base. You can have roadways that are originally constructed with concrete pavement, and then when that concrete breaks down, sometimes they do come in with an asphalt overlay on top of that concrete to extend the life of the roadway as well. At the time when we did the design, with no records for the roadway, we assumed that it was a typical asphalt roadway pavement section with some potential of some concrete base at the utility patching. Sometimes that is common that they will patch those with concrete as the base course instead of asphalt, and then they just do an asphalt surface course on that. So this is the pavement section we were expecting, and we'll talk about what we actually found. So next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. So we went out there first, and the DNF, the contractor, milled off that surface course, which is about 2 inches. And what we found was really a patchwork quilt of base course. In the photo on the upper left, you'll see starting from the left, the base course in this is multiple different scenarios. From the left-hand curve, we have a strip of concrete base, then we have a strip of asphalt, then we have a concrete utility trench, then in the middle we have a separate piece of concrete, followed by asphalt on the right going to the curb. You can also see in this photo at the concrete utility trench, there are cracks going left to right in this photo, which is what we would call transverse cracks. It's not in the direction of the travel, but transverse to that. And that's a utility trench where the concrete itself was cracking into several different pieces. And you could have seen those cracks in the previous slides photos. The photo in the bottom left-hand corner is down closer to Brookville. Here we had concrete on the left-hand side. In the center was the stone, and that was the example of the stone that Shayna shared or let you all see. And then asphalt on the right-hand side. Elsewhere, we also found patches of aggregate. You can see 2 photos on the right-hand side. Elsewhere along the road, it was just very patchy. While the aggregate seemed firm, it had a lot of material in there. As Shayna mentioned, the aggregate was much larger than you typically see in a road stone base. And also, as Shayna mentioned, it was basically right below that surface course. So we did not have a full section of pavement there. But as we were out there looking at this in the patching with the equipment running over, we were seeing some areas where the subbase was moving, which we did expect in the areas that we had witnessed the alligator cracking beforehand. But with the finding this patchwork of subbase or base course material and some other movement elsewhere, we felt that it was important that we really check the whole roadway to make sure we have a sound base here. So if we go to the next slide, what we did was we came out the next day. The contractor brought one of their dump trucks loaded with stone, and we drove that truck down both sides of the roadway. And as it went, we watched the road base under the wheels as the load came onto a piece of base and then off of it to see if we could visually see movement. And what we found, some of it wasn't surprising, where we saw that concrete utility trench patch that was broken into pieces. Those pieces moved independently. So as the truck drove over them, they would depress or go into the ground a little bit further. And as the truck weight came off, they lift back up. Along the center of the roadway, we also saw similar movement, but that was in larger patches than what we had anticipated based on the alligator cracking that we witnessed on the surface. And what this means is that alligator cracking was still in the process. It would have kept spreading as that roadway base moved. But then also what we found is that along the south side of the road, much of it near the curb also noticeably compressed under loading. And so even though this area is where cars parked and didn't see heavy traffic loads from the traffic going through the street, it would have continued to deteriorate, and you would see more and more cracking along the sides as well. So as part of while we were out there, after seeing the areas that needed repairs, we CPJ and DNF worked together to identify, okay, well, what's the actual limits that we need to do? And these took into also constructability consideration. So if we found isolated patches that were really close together, we linked them together, because the space in between, even though we didn't see movement, by the time we repaired the areas on either side that was having problems, that area in the center would then most likely be damaged and then needing replacement as well. The other constructability type concerns we looked at is because the existing base course was a patchwork of different types of material, if a portion of the asphalt, let's say, was we were seeing movement in it, but then there was a portion that we were not seeing movement in, if we only replaced the area that was moving, if the resultant was only going to be a narrow strip of the asphalt remaining before it met up, let's say, with a concrete pad or a concrete base that was not moving, we decided that it's better to take it all the way to the concrete instead of leaving a small strip of asphalt to remain, because more than likely that would start failing because of all the different patchwork. So instead of leaving as a patchwork, we would try to make it a little bit more cohesive. So taking into those constructability considerations, we mapped out the limits that we felt would be the bare bones minimum that would have to get replaced in order to get a good quality road base before we put the overlay back on. We go to the next slide. The next two slides, we're going to show you what those limits are. So this plan view, starting on the left, is Connecticut Avenue. So everywhere on this sheet that you see a red with a diagonal hatch, that's an area that needs full depth patch or full depth repair. And then the left-hand side of this plan view is just east of the driveway for 15 Primrose. So it's roughly half the length of this roadblock. But you can see a majority of this area is shaded in red that would need to come out. And these are a mixture of either failing concrete patches that need to be replaced or the asphalt base that needs to be corrected as well. We go to the next slide. We will see the continuation of this down to Brookville Road. And here you can see, this is where you see almost the entire south side of the street had soft movement or had soft soils or space that was moving under the weight of the trucks. And there was a lot of fine cracking that we were seeing in the base course as well, which would only have over time come to the surface more so. From these two, you can see the majority of the road has a full depth repair that's needed. So the two options that we're going to start talking about, the first option is going to be If we only did this minimum amount that we need to get the full depth, and then our second option I'll talk about in a second is if we just went ahead and said, let's just rebuild the road completely, so we have a good solid base to go forward. So what we're calling option A is the full depth repairs of the areas that we shaded on the previous 2 slides. This would include stone subbase replacement where necessary. Because portions of the base course would, of the existing base course would remain, that would be in the areas that were not hatched in red. What that would end up is there would be essentially a joint between the existing subbase that's going to remain and the new full depth repair that we did. That joint, when we put the overlay on top of it over time, especially if the existing base course that's remaining is concrete, which is a very rigid structure and doesn't move very much, there would be difference of movement when the vehicles went across the two between an asphalt base course versus a concrete base course. And you would see that joint ultimately reflect up through that surface course to have a crack on the surface. So in this situation for this type of repair, what would be recommended is to put down, after we rebuild, do the base course repair, before we put on the surface overlay, we would install paving fabric down there down the street. This paving fabric is a geotextile. We would align it so that it laps across those joints where the existing base course and the new full depth repair abut each other. What this will do is it's going to help delay that reflective crack formation. It will not prevent it, but it will just delay it and take a little bit longer to form. It does that because it's creating it as a stress relieving membrane between the base course and the overlay. When those cracks eventually do form, it's recommended they be sealed to prevent water and debris intrusion into the joint, which can cause more or can degrade the overlay. But even when those cracks do come through, the paving fabric is still there and it's still providing assistance to the overlay to help extend its useful life of it. The entire roadway would still receive the 2-inch overlay of new asphalt surface course once all the full depth repairs would be done. So we want to talk about the sequence of how this type of option would be done. The actual sequence of construction that would be seen on site if this option was selected. So we would divide the work along the full length of block into 2 phases, approximately about half of the length of the road at the time. This location would be near the 15 Primrose driveway, because that's approximately midway of the block as well. So we would do first half of the length of the road. Most likely we would start at the Brookville Road end. We would come through, we would complete all the curb and gutter replacement, and any driveway aprons that were agreed upon would also be replaced. Once that concrete reaches cured strength, they can then start completing the full depth repairs. This end of the road, we estimate that it would take approximately 16 days to complete all the work once it starts. Once that's completed, we would then go down and do the half of the roadway that joins to Connecticut Avenue. It'd be the same sequencing of construction there with doing all the curb and gutter, but down here we do have to also install the trench drain still, and then we would do the full depth repairs. Because of the trench drain, this end we're estimating would take about 20 days because it does take a little bit longer to install that trench drain and get it set. Once both ends of the road were complete, then we would come through and do the finished surface course for the entire length of the road. The duration of this would be about 1 to 2 days, so we're just saying approximately 2 days to complete all of that. Next slide. So to understand, I've talked about the overall durations, but the actual impact to residents and their access to their driveways, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Individual properties will lose access when the curb and gutter at their driveway and the driveway apron, if it's agreed upon, are replaced. That disruption or access restriction would be approximately 3 days to let that concrete cure and get strength before vehicles drive across it. Those disruptions would be on a rolling basis as the contractor moves down the length of the road. Once all of the concrete is done and reached the cured strength, that's when they would come back and do the full depth repairs. When they're doing those full depth repairs, because these repairs go to the middle of the road and sometimes beyond the middle of the road, the residents on both sides of the street at the location where they're doing that repair would lose access to their house or their driveway. The duration of that could be up to 10 days. Depends on the size of that full depth patch or full depth repair. Some of them may be smaller and may be able to open back up to traffic sooner, but we're just saying for right now it'll be about 10 days because that's a lot of intricate coordination that need to happen there. Then when it comes time to do the final surface course overlay, again, it would take approximately 2 days, but the access would only be restricted during daytime hours. So we would have to have all the vehicles off the street from the start of the construction day to the end. It would be reopened to traffic in the evening, but during the day, we need to be able to pave from curb to curb the length of the roadway to get a good installation of that overlay. During this work, residents would be able to park at the other end of Primrose when, as I mentioned, we're doing the length of the road in 2 phases. So the other end that's not being worked on, residents could park there or on adjacent streets. But at all times, we would maintain access for emergency vehicles. So even during the time when we're doing the full depth repairs and it's closed to residential vehicles, at the end of the day, the contractor would be installing temporary ramps for any open cuts or wherever there's a difference of elevation, so that if emergency vehicles needed to come down the street during the evening, they would be able to do so safely. With this option, there are some considerations to take into account. As I already mentioned, expect the reflective cracks that will need sealing. This could develop within a few years of the finish of the project. It may not take very long for those to come up, but they can be sealed to keep the water out. The existing road cross-section shape would remain as it is today. In the bottom center of the screen, I have a little graphic that I drew up to kind of roughly give you an idea of what that cross-section would look like or what it is out there today. You do have a high point at the center of the road, and the water does drain to the curbs as it's intended. There's nothing wrong with the drainage of the road. The only reason I point this out is because the way the road is currently shaped, the slope going from the center line of the road towards the curb is a little bit flatter towards the middle of the road, and it gets a little steeper as it ties into the curb. It's mostly an issue for maintenance when they come in and do mill and overlays. That break joint or difference of slopes is a little bit challenging that they have to work around. But because we'd be leaving some of the existing base course, we would have no way to change that down the roadway. So we would be left with this. The finished pavement, where at the place that we do the full depth repairs, would be a total of 7 inches thick. And this is what I'm talking about. This is just the asphalt thickness. It doesn't account for any stone subbase, but it consists of a 5-inch asphalt base course with the 2-inch asphalt surface course overlay. I did want to mention that in general, with proper maintenance, asphalt overlays can last between 10 to 15 years. There's a lot of variables with how long it lasts, including traffic volume on the road. And it also depends on the maintenance that's done on the road. On the right-hand side of this slide, or lower right corner, is a photo I wanted to show everyone, an example of what a crack seal looks like. I'm sure you've all seen them driving down the road, but I just wanted everyone to be on the same page of what that would look like. All right, on the next slide, we'll talk about option B, which is if we rebuild the entire road. In this scenario, the entire road base course is completely removed, and we would rebuild the road to meet Montgomery County standard for a primary residential road. including the stone subbase where it's necessary. We are saying primary residential road because we do know that based off the traffic studies that have been done in the village, that this street does receive higher amount of vehicles going down it compared to some other adjacent streets. So this roadway is in section from the county is intended to handle that sort of volume on it. The sequence of construction to rebuild the road, again, we are dividing the road into phases, basically halfway. We would still start at the Brookville Road end. We would still begin with all the curb and gutter replacement and driveway aprons where agreed upon. Once those were set, then that's when they would remove the entire existing road and rebuild it. Then we would flip and do the same side of the Connecticut Avenue, and again, including the trench drain. In this case, the Brookville side, we estimate that'll take about approximately 12 days complete, all of that. The Connecticut Avenue, because of the trench drain, we're estimating about 16 days. And again, similar to the other option is once we're done, the final surface course layer would then be put down the entire length of the road. Again, approximately 2 days it would take to complete that. Next slide. In this instance, the impact to residents' access to their driveways, still it'd be about 3 days when the curb and gutter and at the driveway and or the driveway apron is replaced. During the replacement of the full road and rebuilding the road, because the contractor does not have to work around all the existing pieces that are remaining, it'll be simpler to do so, to do the repair. So it's estimated that each half of the roadway for the roadway rebuilding will take about 6 days each. And during that time, the residents will not have access to their driveways, but we still will maintain access for emergency vehicles, of course. And then similar as the other option, when we do the final surface course overlay, we would need to have the road closed to residential traffic during the daytime to install that overlay, and it would be reopened at night. Same thing, residents can park at the other end of Primrose or in adjacent streets. And as I mentioned, access for emergency vehicles will always be maintained. Considerations for this option is we don't need to have a need for paving fabric because the entire road section is uniform. As I mentioned, we would not only would be installing as a pavement section to the county standard, but we would also be able to change the road cross section's shape. So on the right hand side, you can see a graphic of what that would look like. It's where you have the high point in the center and you have a consistent slope to the concrete curb and gutter. It just makes it easier for down the road when a mill and overlay is required. It's much easier for the contractor to come in and do that. In this scenario, because we're rebuilding it and we're doing it to the county standard for a primary residential road, the finished asphalt thickness will be 8 inches. That includes a 5-inch base course and a 3-inch surface course. That 3-inch surface course will be done in 2 1.5-inch layers. That's county standard way of doing that. When you have a new roadway built with proper maintenance, they typically have an average lifespan of 25 years before that surface course starts degrading, where you would need to come in and do a mill and overlay on that. So obviously a much more longer duration before significant repairs would be needed. And then finally, the next slide, we're going to talk about the cost of this. So in the current contract, there are line items for removal and disposal of the existing asphalt base course and stone subbase. We have line item for replacing the asphalt base course and replacing the stone subbase. These line items total to $92,900. And then there's also a separate line item for maintenance of traffic of $15,000. That's what's currently in the contract. Option A, with the full depth repairs, we are going to see additional quantities of the removal and disposal, as well as the asphalt base and stone subbase replacement beyond the quantities that are in the current contract. We have the addition of the paving fabric. There will also, because of the larger areas, there will need to be additional geotechnical testing as the materials go in, and we will also need additional maintenance of traffic as well. So DNF has put together the cost estimates for these, and so for this option, above the current contract, we would need authorization for an additional $107,000. Option B, to rebuild the road. Again, obviously, we're going to have significant quantity adjustment from what we had in the contract of additional removal and disposal, base course replacement, and stone subbase replacement. Again, the additional geotechnical testing and MOT. And because of the increased area, this would need authorization for additional cost of $200,000. I just wanted to note that when we go and remove the stones or the asphalt or concrete base course that's out there currently, we know some areas don't really have a stone subbase, or the stone could be potentially from the surface down. But if we run into a stone subbase that cannot be compacted, it's still moving too much, and it has to be removed to replace, if the existing soil subgrade below that is weak or soft and we can't get the proper compaction on it, the way that's dealt with is we remove that bad material and we put in additional stone subbase to stabilize it. There's no way to know the quantities of that at this time, so we can't estimate that. But so I wanted you to be aware that that's not included in the cost that I've quoted above for that. So that's the end of the slides. And I guess, Shayna, if you want to add anything, if we want to open it for questions.
Yeah, so I think one thing I just wanted to add is that clarify with you, is that those numbers, the 107,000 for option A and the 200,000 for option B, do not include any contingencies for either the soil subbase or just for general other things, correct?
That's correct.
So the ultimate number that the board should consider when deciding which of these options should also include a contingency. Is there a percentage amount that you think would be appropriate from your experience?
It's hard to say because you really just don't know how much the road is going to be. Generally, on a normal project, from the outset, we would say 10 to 15% of the total cost of the project. And I don't remember if we included any contingency in the main contract or when that was approved or not. So somewhere in that neighborhood, I would say, would be a good target starting place.
I can look it up, but I think there was a 15% contingency in the base contract. But I think we'll open it up to the board. Ultimately, I think you have some discretion there of the contingency amount that you all would feel comfortable with. And it would basically be to establish a contingency amount. If we reach that, it would just trigger us coming back to you if additional funds are needed, either at a subsequent board meeting or to call an emergency meeting if needed. Understanding that I would hope to have some discretion afforded to me, because we don't certainly want to hold up this project if we think that we need to go over whatever contingency you all established this evening. So understanding that we want to work within the legal confines of what we can do, but I just want to make sure that I have the board's consent that even if we do reach that contingency and I need to give the contractor direction to keep moving forward, that I have that green light from you all, understanding that we'll come back to get the contract and budget amendments that are needed to firm all of that up. Is there anything? We also have DNF, our contractor, also joining us virtually if the board has any specific questions for them. But I think now would be the appropriate time to open it up to you all to see if you have any questions or comments. And we do also have some residents that are joining us virtually.
So I had thought when we spoke that the rebuilding of the road not only would be more expensive, but would be much more time consuming. And what I'm seeing here is that it's less time.
Correct.
It's less time. It's less time, and we get a road that lasts longer.
Correct.
So
Seldom have I seen an easier.
Can we afford it, treasurer?
So this is one road in a whole series of roads
Yes.
from down at Western Avenue on up.
Yeah,
Is
where do you
this
see
kind of
this
the
again?
first of 10 roads that need to be rebuilt? And
Yeah.
do we need to look at it from that perspective?
So
Or why is this one special, aside from the fact that we happen to be digging it up?
Well, this one was special because of the
the trench drain, yeah, we're already there, so we
Well,
have to
yeah,
do
I-
something.
We're already there. I guess what I'm suggesting is, I wouldn't pour a lot of money into one road if I can avoid it with a schedule, with it as an option A, because it just doesn't seem sensible to me to do it that way.
And you do raise a good point. Why this roadway is distinctive is we have done a visual inspection of the other roadways, and we don't see this level of visual degradation that we see in this block of Primrose Street. This is really why it is an outlier, and it's why the original project, which was solely just the trench drain, was expanded to do a full replacement of the curbs and roadway, because we had identified that it had degraded at a faster rate than the street surrounding it. So simply based on a visual inspection of the other surrounding streets, we're not seeing a degrading along the surface as we do in this block. So I think that is really the reason why it stands out and warrants this. Now, that's not to say that if we go to, excuse me, mill another roadway along the east side of the village, that it may not also be showing this level of substandard base. But at least as it relates to what we're seeing on the surface, which is clearly a good indication of what's happening beneath, this is an outlier.
And this is also one of the longest roads.
And receives some of the highest
And the
traffic,
highest
traffic, all
aside
the
from
volume.
Bradley Lane, which certainly sees the peak. But on the east side of the village, it is essentially, from our calculations, Bradley, Primrose, and the Newlands.
although I don't think it's provable. It seems unlikely to me that it's not partly to do with the unusual flooding and continual damage from water, which we still don't really know exactly why it's happening, but we do know that it does happen, and that's what caused us to be working on this road in the first place.
Robin, do you want to speak to that point? Because that was something that we discussed.
Yeah, we didn't see from the milled roadway, or even before, we did not see groundwater coming up through the base. I mean, I've been on streets in other neighborhoods where they're, on these hillsides, and I've seen cracks in the pavement, and they're just damp year round, and that's groundwater coming up through the pavement. I didn't see that at Primrose. However, with the constant base flow there of the water that we're going to collect in the trench drain, currently it's running down the curb and gutter and along the asphalt there, and the edge of the asphalt before we milled it had shown a lot of degradation along there and cracks, and that would also, those cracks would allow water to get into your stone sub base and weaken the sub base. So there is a potential that some of the groundwater could be certainly contributing to having areas of the sub base not being as compact and allowing for all this additional movement. But right now we haven't seen any necessarily water coming up through the roadway, at least, but it could be a contributing factor, yes.
I had a question. Is it the case that the full with the full replacement of the road, are we more likely to find sub layer problems because we're just going to expose more of the sub layer?
Certainly, if the if you were looking at the full depth repairs, the area where we were leaving the sub base, that could be on top of an area that has a weak subsoil that we won't know because we're not disturbing it. So certainly you could find stuff under there. I would say is at some point, as that sub base, if it breaks down, or if there is that pocket, then it could eventually become undermined enough that it could crack, and you can see the cracking happen at that point. So if it is there, you'll deal with it at one time or another, either now or down the road. But it just depends on the timing on that. But obviously, I have no way of predicting that at this point.
My
It seems
feeling,
to me that,
Okay.
that
had we not done this, it would be one conversation, but now we've ripped up the road and we have to do something. And why wouldn't we do the something that gives us the greatest chance of not having to do it again in 10 years?
I agree with that. This is enormously disruptive to
Yeah,
the people
it
on
is.
this street. No one else is going to say, hey, please come do this to my street. I want to have no access to my driveway, or I can't unload groceries. I mean, this is not something that everybody's going to be clamoring for, but we've now exposed a street that needs to be repaired. So
Just to confirm, in terms of a resident of Primrose Street, the number of days that they'll be denied access to their driveway, option A and B, are they the same
Pretty
at this
similar,
point?
it seems like.
Robin, you want to confirm that?
A is longer.
They are not.
Yes.
In terms of denial of access to the driveways? I mean, there's the total project duration, but then in terms of if you're a resident suffering the longest possible denial of access,
Mhm.
what is that option A versus option B?
Robin,
So-
or go ahead.
Yeah. So option A and option B. So when we're doing the curb and gutter, it's equivalent disruption. It's going to be about the 3 days while we're doing the concrete curb and gutter replacement in front of their driveway and or their driveway apron. And then once that cures, they would have access to their driveway again until they finish doing all the concrete curb and gutter for that half of the street. And they come back to do either the full depth repairs or the full road rebuild. For option A, we were estimating that the disruption there could be about 10 days for that. For option B, we're estimating about 6 days. Now that's for each end of the street. So we're going to do one end, and those residents would see that. And then when we go to the other end, the other residents would see that. And then under both options, the residents would see during the day for the final overlay, about 2 days, just during daylight hours, they would not have access to their driveways, which means they would have to have left their driveway prior to works commencing that day. In Parks and Rec, if they're going to, if they have to run a trip in the middle of the day, they would still have to move their car before construction started that day. But then in the evening, they would be able to come back into their driveway for the night.
And they might not be able to get to their driveway, but they would be able to drive a large part of the way up the street to park, so that they're not walking a half mile, they're walking a tenth of a mile to get to their
Yes.
house.
Yeah, so half of the roadway will not be under construction at either time. So they would be able to park on the other half of the road.
Well, I tipped my hand on this a bit. To me, the only reason not to go with option, the full reconstruction, is if we felt like we couldn't afford it, if we just didn't have the cash to do it. And that is not the case. We've been anticipating stormwater management projects that are probably not going to be feasible. So we're quite comfortable in terms of the reserves that we have available for something like this. And if we're not going to use that to make our streets right, what's it for?
Exactly.
okay, well, I kind of feel like that is the sense. Maybe you are an outlier.
Do I hear? This is not a strongly held position, but my view was that the financial future is shaky nationwide, and no matter how strong it is for us now, we don't know what it's going to be in 4 years, and 4 more years of what we're going through now could put us in a very dangerous situation. And my sense is that as a general rule, we should spend as little as we can and get the job done as well as we can while doing so. And I see kind of the difference between option A and B. One is sort of Cadillac and the other is a Chevy. And I would go with the Chevy and just basically on that basis. But
I'm worried that the Chevy is going to fall apart in 3 years, and we're going to spend a lot of time
Do it all over.
well,
cracking and fixing
that's
and
entirely possible.
and not
There's
up to
no way-
county
there's
standards
no way to
and-
know, but that was my view of why I took that.
Well, there are a few people whose counsel I listen to more carefully than yours. So but I continue to disagree with it in
Okay.
this case.
Fair enough.
Yeah, do any of the residents have questions?
Are there any residents on the virtual feed that would like to unmute and ask any questions of our contractor or project engineer?
Richard Klein here. I just wanted to say that during this past winter, I have noticed and seen a lot of brown water coming up from the Connecticut Avenue end of the center of the street. So I do think that the sub base there is pretty, could be very wet.
Well, does anyone want to make a motion about this so we can hold a vote about this?
So again, let me just clarify.
With
You'll
the
need to select first the option and the first motion that's on your sheet to to authorize the change order for the contract amendment. But then,
Could I interrupt real quick? It's Chip Lindsay. I'm at 28 Primrose.
Oh, okay, sure. I thought
I'm
we heard
sorry.
everybody.
It is a main thoroughfare cut through between Western and Connecticut, and I want to make sure, or at least get some clarification about the speed bumps that we have on the street now, and whether or not those are going to be replaced, or maybe even we could get some more if we wanted to.
so yeah, under the original project scope, the original speed humps will be replaced in their prior locations. This project would not entail adding any new speed humps because the village has adopted a separate, distinct process for
I
installing.
get it. But I just want to make sure that they are going to come back. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, correct. But one of the things that you'll need to make clear if you're making the motion about the budget resolution is just how much you are authorizing to be moved from reserves to the capital budget pursuant to the option you're choosing, plus a percentage for a contingency.
So for example, the 200,000 would become 220,000 at a 10% contingency, or 230 at a 15%.
Correct. Is that, I just want to make sure, because we usually have this far more buttoned up than we have to do this evening. Is that okay?
Yes.
The way I presented that? Perfect.
Yeah.
So what do we think for the contingency?
So just don't.
15%.
Yeah, I think that's a good.
Correct.
15%.
15% is good.
Yeah.
I move to authorize the village manager to execute a change order for the Primrose Stormwater Runoff Remediation Trench Drain and Roadway Rehabilitation Project in an amount not to exceed $240,000, and to adopt resolution number 40125 as drafted.
For option B.
For option B.
For option B.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed.
Got it. Okay, so the motion passes for option B.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all very much. And of course, we will be following up with the residents of the block and firming up with our contractor the anticipated timeline for resuming work and what the firm's schedule will need to look like. I just want to thank our contractor for joining us on the virtual feed, as well as Robin Barnhart, who has done a just fantastic job of helping us sort through what is a somewhat, technical and complicated manner. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next thing on the agenda is, where are we?
The first contract authorization for body worn.
Yes, got it. A 3-year extension for body worn cameras.
Yes, and this would be to remain with Motorola, the company that we have been with since the outset of the establishment of our body worn camera program. And this will include replacement equipment as well as maintenance and upgrades of the software, which really is a critically important aspect of any body worn camera program, because that is where we store the data.
Right.
That's where we can control the data when we have to remit it. in response to a request for redacting sections, et cetera. And so the department, I believe, has been happy with Motorola and recommends the recommendation.
Yes, very much so. They've been very responsive, not only in getting the new cameras, but in transitioning to the upgraded model recently. So yeah, we're very happy with them.
Okay. I move to authorize the village manager to execute a 3-year contract extension for the police department's body-worn cameras with Motorola Solutions Incorporated.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and next is for our auditor, audit services.
I'll let Jackie handle that one.
There we go. Okay. So I come before you this evening. The first contract extension that we're requesting is for the independent audit services. And Lindsay and Associates is coming to the end of their first initial 3-year part of the contracts. We're requesting the first of our 2 1-year extension options. And I did reach out to the financial review committee, and they did give their support of the extension.
And they're the only committee that is associated with the work of the auditor, of course.
Okay. Anybody have a motion on this?
I move to authorize the village manager to execute a letter exercising the first of 2 1-year contract extensions for independent audit services with Lindsay and Associates LLC.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. And then the next is with refuse and recycling.
Yes, so I'm coming before you to request the extension for a third 1-year extension. This will be the last one for good for this cycle before we have to rebid it next year.
And because we don't normally come to you with 3rd-year extensions, as you'll remember last year when we needed to restructure the contract with the good companies, they had asked if we could tack on an additional extension year. And so we did that. And so that's why this is coming to you as a 3rd extension. Typically, our contracts are a 3-year base with 2 extension options.
And we've had no complaints on the workers. Everyone's really happy with the crews that are out here.
I think we might have a revolt if we
Yes.
didn't have the current
Is there
workers.
any updated sense of their ability to continue their current services after this contract?
My sense is that yes, they will be able to continue to provide the services. We anticipate we will see a size.
Because there was some concern about could they continue? Yeah. So just wondering, just making sure.
Yeah, they've gone
Let's just
through
get
some
this.
corporate changes, so I think they will certainly be able to continue. I think the
There's
numbers
no
may be a
no
little
rumblings
unsettling.
of.
Correct.
Sounds good.
I move to authorize the village manager to execute a letter exercising the third of 3 1-year contract extensions for refuse and recycling services with the Good Companies Incorporated.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. So next we have some board authorization.
Yeah, so this is pretty simple. Chapter 5 of the Village Code authorizes the village manager to issue municipal infractions for things that are violations of the village code. The code also allows that other individuals may also have this authority. And so what we're bringing to you this evening is a request for your authorization to designate the village's permitting and code enforcement coordinator to have those powers. As I outlined in my staff report, currently our police officers issue municipal infractions. That requires a 2-step process where our permitting code enforcement coordinator, who typically is the one who has witnessed or confirmed the violation, then has to complete an affidavit to then provide over to the village officer who then issues the citation. And so it's just a cumbersome, unnecessary 2-step process. The other wrinkle would be that if someone requested a hearing for a municipal infraction, that means that we'd be sending both the officer and the permitting code enforcement coordinator to that court hearing to defend to be witnesses as our legal counsel would defend that municipal infraction. So it just creates unnecessary process. We'd like to streamline this along the lines of what Chapter 5 allows, and Village Council has advised that we should have an affirmative board direction to allow this to happen.
I move to authorize the village's permitting and code enforcement coordinator to issue municipal infractions pursuant to Chapter 5 of the Village Code.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Thank you all very much.
And so now we have a bunch of appointments to commissions and committees and boards. I can do it quickly.
Yeah, I'll just run through all of them, and if someone is even so bold as to want to maybe tackle these all as one motion, you're more than welcome. So the first being the Building Facilities Commission. Ann Shields is a current member who lives within sight and sound of the Village Hall, which is a requirement for at least one position on the Building Facilities Commission. And then a new member is joining Mel Anku of Hesketh Street to complete the term that was previously vacated by another member a few years ago. So that's why the term would go through April of 2028. For the Ethics Commission, it would be a two-part reappointment of Mr. Frank McCulloch to serve both as a member and as a chair, as a member through 2028 and as chair through 2026. I've discussed with Ms. Leonard and Mr. Morseberger that this is as I've determined, the only commission that requires annual reappointment by the board of the chair, and that's something we might want to revise. It just seems like a necessary process to bring that back to you every single year. Then for the Tree Ordinance Board, prior member, Ms. Tyndall, has indicated that she would like to step down and not seek reappointment for her seat on the Tree Ordinance Board. And so current alternate, Cato Scanlon Johnson, has volunteered to step up to the Tree Ordinance Board. So that would leave one vacancy as a Tree Ordinance Board alternate. And then Gail Ifshin of Western Avenue is due for reappointment to fill that second alternate position. And the terms are indicated there on your motion sheet.
Okay, let's do this as a threefer.
I'll give it a shot. Regarding the Building Facilities Commission, I move to reappoint to the Building Facilities Commission Ann Shields of West Kirk Street to serve as a member with a term ending April 2030, and to appoint Mel Anku of Hesketh Street to serve as a member to complete the term of a previously vacated position ending April 2028. Regarding the Ethics Commission, I move to reappoint Frank Scott McCulloch of Kirkside Drive as a member, term ending February 2028, and as chair, term ending February 2026. Regarding the Tree Ordinance Board, I move to appoint to the Tree Ordinance Board Kate O'Scanlane Johnson of Grove Street to serve as a member, term ending April 2028, and to reappoint Gail Ifshin of Western Avenue to serve as an alternate, term ending April 2027.
I second and applaud.
Yeah, indeed.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you. So efficient.
great. We did that. So now we have a police report.
Good evening, all. I concur that was some impressive motioning there. So, well done, sir. Well done. So as usual, our biggest things are theft from autos. We actually had some in the Saks Fifth Avenue parking lot. We had 3 vehicles that were smashed in the windows. Again, it goes along with the kind of the tale that if you don't leave anything in your car that's visible, you're probably not going to get your window smashed. If you leave something that looks nice and juicy, you're going to get your window smashed. And we had three people that got their window smashed. We have
What kind of day was it during business hours?
it was during business hours, 10 a.m. between 10 a.m. and 12:45.
Wow.
So, and that's with
Whole
they
daylight
have some
check.
substantial security presence,
Yeah.
but it's usually on the opposite side of the lot.
So did it happen on the south side or the north side?
It happened on the side closest to us. On the,
Okay, the south. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were in discussions with the security staff there, and we asked them to put some just gentle reminders.
Yeah.
As long as it looked nice with the Saks Fifth Avenue brand and logo, and just to take your stuff with you or cover it up. But again, this was the second grouping of incidents there. And again, it goes back to the adage, you go to a fishing hole and you catch a good sized fish, you're going to come back. So we're working with them to increase some patrol through the area as well, some visibility from our side and some language from their side to the patrons, and see if they can shift their security forces over a little bit as well. Because they do have good resources over there. They just were on the opposite side of the lot. The 19th, we also had one on the 6300 block of Broad Branch, unlocked vehicle parked in the driveway, looked through, nothing taken, between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. And the 5500 block of Grove Street on the 23rd between 4:30 or 4:43 a.m. and 4:45, unlocked vehicle in the driveway, a little bit of U.S. currency was stolen. We continue to have one opening in the police department, possibly two, depending on how things go later on. And we do actually have two promising candidates. And I say this, and I jinx myself all the time, but we have two candidates that are very promising so far. Hopefully, we're going to be getting conditional offers to them to complete the backside of their background soon. Otherwise, everybody knows that I went to Italy beginning of the month of March. I don't even know what month it is anymore. But thought I'd share with you a composite video. The edit's a little rough because I took it from a lot of different sources, but just kind of give you the scope of what was happening. We'll start with Rome. I'm sorry, we're starting in Greece with the lighting of the flame.
Where he was representing Chevy Chase Village.
Yes, and you'll see our patch there at the opening ceremonies there. So they lit the torch from the rays of the sun. That's us carrying an open flame on a commercial airline.
We do not recommend.
That was our quest at the Vatican. And here's our start of our runs. To have young knees.
So cool.
Then we also had ceremonies at the end of each run. And so at the end of the speeches, they always open up the barriers and it turned into a dance party with the local athletes. Didn't say we danced well. So I got a good draw, luck of the draw there, so right on the left hand was our patch there. And then, so these, some of the local athletes.
She was the chief's favorite.
Yeah, she was. So we did a plunge at the end. We did a plunge, though. We were minions and I was Gru.
Oh, great.
Great.
It was a good time. It was really good. So I'm very thankful for all the support and for allowing me the time to go do that.
What a special trip that.
Yeah, really nice trip.
Thank you for sharing that.
And welcome back. Managers report.
So I'm actually going to follow up on one of the comments the chief made about us having two potential applicants in the applicant pool. We currently essentially have two, we'll call them openings. One is a true vacancy. The other position has been temporarily vacated due to an officer who has accepted a active duty status with the reserves. And that position has been open since 2023. Because the chief, as the chief indicated, he has two candidates that he would like to move forward with. It would likely result in us having one additional complement of officer above what you all have authorized until the point at which we can release the former officer who's on a military status. Under the USERA regulations, which are the federal regulations that control workers who are under military orders or military service, you have to maintain their health insurance for 2 years from the start of their military service. In order for us to maintain an individual's health insurance, we have to show them on our roster, even if they're in an inactive status, for them to qualify for insurance through Montgomery County, which is our insurance provider. That time frame will conclude in October of this year. So, assuming that the chief is able to make these two hires and that we haven't all jinxed ourselves this evening, we would like to move forward with essentially having an additional officer complement. We are not paying compensation currently to the officer who's on military status. We are only paying for his health insurance. And so it would be to authorize me to essentially go from a total staffing complement of 28 to 29 that could start as soon as later this month or May, going through October, when we would officially release that officer off of our books, and then we would truly go to a complement of 28 employees. The military orders that we have received for that officer take him through 2029, so we do not anticipate that he will be returning to us, certainly not before October, if at all. Is there anything I skipped over that I should add, Sue Ellen?
Just a job has to be held open for him, but that does not mean you cannot fill positions while he's not here.
held open for him until 2029
No,
potentially. Yeah.
till.
It's 5 years, so yes, till
Yeah,
2029.
no.
Yeah.
It seems as if the least of our problems is having.
Right.
Too many police officers.
That we have.
Good
Yeah,
point.
if he were to come back, we wouldn't be sorry given
Yeah.
other, the natural
No, that would be a good problem. to
flows
have.
of the department.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we would have a
Yeah.
come back to the board for further authorization from there. So I need the board to move authorization. It is on the motion sheets that are on your table. It is not on the screen.
Yeah, I move to authorize the village manager to hire one additional police officer position above the authorized personnel number in the FY 2025 and pending FY 2026 operating budgets for the police department through October 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. That
Thank
passes.
you.
So you're done?
Yes, sorry, that was it.
At this moment, my house is being torn apart by very high energy nieces and nephews and one grandchild who are all visiting the house. And yet I moved to adjourn.
Thank you. Thanks, all.
And there was a second.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, second.
All in favor?
There were 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd be sure. Thank you.